And then if you just want to go ahead and tell me about George and kind of what you're looking for with training.
Yeah, overall he's a pretty good dog. A couple things that I want to work on with him. Number one, not jumping and biting.
Okay.
You know, he does it in a playful way.
Yeah.
But he gets it's just overstimulation. If we're gone or, you know, you walk out of the room and I come back, he just goes berserk because he's so excited to see you. And so he's jumping a lot. He'll like jump on the doors when we walk in and scratch them all up. And then, you know, he has this tendency to, you know, bite, just not like bite, but like, you know, whatever they do in a playful way.
Yeah.
And it's just annoying.
Okay.
Right? So I want that to go away. And then what I'm really nervous about, kind of, that's annoying part, but whatever. The most thing that I'm nervous about is, you know, we go to Michigan in the summertime. And right now, you know, he'll come to me sometimes when I call him, right? He kind of plays a game. And sometimes he just looks at me and it's like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my own thing. And so I'm concerned with the road in Michigan and him just darting across it and not paying attention. So I just want him to come when his name is called.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Two major things for him.
Okay.
He's not an aggressive dog. You know, just listen when he's told, right? Like, drop it. Like, he'll steal my kids' toys and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
he does it playfully, like, but sometimes you're like, all right, you're now tearing up an American Girl doll. Can we let it go?
Yeah.
So that sort of thing.
Okay. So basically just some general obedience, some manners, a way to easily tell him not to do something, and then a reliable off-leash recall.
Exactly.
Okay. And does he have any other behavior issues or anything that's concerned you in the past that I would need to know about as well?
Like, what do you mean?
Like general anxiety, aggression, anything like that?
No.
Okay. Just double checking there.
Unless you think anxiety means when we leave him, and then he gets crazy when we come back. But I don't think he's fine when he's at home. He just sits in his chair and looks out the window.
Okay. So when you're gone, he's fine. It's just when you come back, he's just excited to see you?
Yeah. Like,
okay.
Really excited.
Yeah, that's not a huge problem. But that can also be addressed with everything. And then you do know that we do e-collar, right?
Yep.
Okay. Great, because sometimes people will schedule it and then they don't know we do e-collar, then we bring it up, and then consultation's over because they don't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it like this. He's been in 2 training classes. We've done Call of the Wild. I don't know if you're familiar with Call of the Wild.
I'm not.
They're great, don't get me wrong, but I can tell where we are right now. Like, if we're in class, he does everything we tell him to do. Right?
Okay, yeah.
The minute we get home, he's kind of like, I'm at home now, so like,
yeah.
whatever, I'm going to do whatever I want, right? So he's modeled behavior if you're kind of having a class setting, and you know he'll do whatever, sit like this.
Yeah, is that a like positive reinforcement then with the food?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. And so when he's at home, he's just like, well, this is my territory now, and I kind of do what I want. So we kind of have a mismatch, I think, of who's in charge of who.
Yeah.
Is my opinion on like kind of like the dog level. And so he knows right now that I think he's in training, so he's going to behave and he's going to sit or he's going to lay down.
Yeah, that makes sense with the food stuff especially, because the food stuff is great, but the problem happens where you're noticing it, where once you're switching up the environment, then he's like, oh, I don't really care that much here, or maybe the food's not enough of a reward for him to want to follow through with anything.
Well, he's very food motivated, so like I think if I always had food on me, he would kind of do whatever I said. The problem is I don't always have food on me, right? And like, don't want a fat dog either. So, you know, he's just got to learn that when mom says come, you come, or when mom says down, you get down.
Yeah.
I'm fine with being playful and fun sometimes. Like, it doesn't have to be like totally, a boring dog. But when I tell him to do something, or when my husband tells him to do something, he needs to do it.
Yeah.
It's just my kind of general.
Yeah.
Just like with my kids, if I tell them to do something, they need to do it.
Yeah. So with the e-collar, that's like an easy way we can introduce the idea of like telling him things not to do, because with the food we're only rewarding like, yes, we like that. We can't really tell him, no, we don't like that. So that's something we could definitely do with the e-collar. And then with the e-collar as well, just adding more structure in the home, kind of letting him know the rules of settle down at this time, or like when we give you this command, you follow through with it. No matter if there's food, no matter if there's anything, like you just have to do it. So for us with the e-collar, we use, I don't know if you've looked at any e-collars or anything like that before. We use Dogtra. So
yeah, that's the one. I think I looked it up. I kind of linked to your clinic, I think, from that one.
Okay.
I'm correct on that?
Yeah. So You might, because on the website we have access to like videos describing all the collars. Just because we are an official dog show retailer, so like we sell the collars here too. That's just a more professional brand. So like when I give you a recommendation on the collar by the end of the consultation, it will be a dog show one. They are just the best overall because they're the most professional. They're used for like police dogs. They're used for all of our clients, and they're just kind of the most like rounded. So with dog show collars, we have 127 levels. So with that, we can easily find whatever number is going to kind of work best for George. So let's say he's maybe not 20, maybe not 30. We have like 23, 25, 26. We have all that. Whereas certain different brands of collars only go from 1 to 10, and their 10 is the same as 127, but now maybe 5 is not getting through to him, but 6, now he's yelping a lot, and it's too much. So that's why we use these ones here, and that's what we're going to recommend to you. And then for the general obedience stuff, that's something that we could definitely work on. That is a pretty easy thing to do with the e-collar once we start introducing the commands and the discipline and everything. So the idea behind the e-collar is that we're introducing physicality to them now. So it's the same thing as with a prong collar. It's the same thing with like a slip lead, anything like that. It's just communicating to them in a language that they're going to understand better, because since they can't communicate with words from a young age, they're already learning from their mother what to do and what not to do, and the mom will just bite the dog. So I don't know if you've seen, there's like a popular YouTube video of like a cream retriever biting one of their puppies to like settle all them down. So basically all these puppies are going crazy. They're all over the mom, not giving her space. She goes and she nips one, and then they all settle down. They all calm down. So that's just their language of how they understand, hey, don't do this. And that's what we're introducing with the e-collar. So the e-collar you can basically think of as like physicality from any distance. So you can apply that for the off-leash recall. You have the ability to touch him from afar.
Yeah, no, I'm completely on board with the e-collar.
Yeah.
The reason we're here is because I recognize where he thinks he is and the chain of who's in charge.
Yeah.
So we just have to kind of put him back in his place. We love him, but we need to put him back in his place. We don't want to totally break his spirit, but he needs to know that it's us in charge.
Yeah, and having that structure is important. So something that Jesse likes to say is that you can't have like a completely free dog and also have a completely like obedient dog. You need to have that good mixture. I think the way that he likes to separate it is like 70% structure, 30% like he gets his freedom. And then with the e-collar, he'll actually technically get more freedom because, for example, with my dog, I can let him do off-leash stuff everywhere. He gets to have the time of his life. I know that I can make everything happen. Right. For the obedience stuff in the home, that's going to be less on using commands and more on correcting those behaviors. So, for example, when he's getting too mouthy and stuff like that, we can either use the e-collar to correct that outright. So, like, we don't want you getting mouthy with us when we walk in at all. And then we wouldn't tie any command to that. We would just be correcting it directly with the e-collar.
So not to do it again.
And then that's just going to eliminate that behavior. If you want to be able to turn it on and off more, like, okay, you can do it sometimes, then we would tie in a word. So it would just be like a preferred word of stop or leave it or out, how you said. Other than that, the basic commands that we would go over are heel, sit, down, stay, and place, and then recall. Are you familiar with heel and everything like that?
Yeah, when they just walk next to you, your hip.
Yeah.
We
So
try to do that, which he does okay at, unless it's like a bird or tree.
Okay.
The crossing guard, for example, when we walk to school,
yeah.
always gives him a treat in the morning, so now he pulls to
Oh, okay.
which is annoying, and then I try to pull him back in the heel. He's not too bad walking with me. I mean, I do let him walk a little bit in front of me just because I like him to make me walk fast, right? Work out.
Yeah.
But he's not too bad on a leash. It's just when there's something that he's interested in is what drives me nuts, which we fight about a lot. And that's the crossing guard mostly, or a squirrel, or a bird.
Okay. Yeah. So that's something with our heel command, it's really strict. And then we obviously have the e-collar to reinforce.
Yeah.
So all that can get cleaned up as well. So for our heel, he is to walk with us, stay at our side, and then sit when we stop. The whole time, loose leash, right shoulder in line with our left leg. Obviously, he may not start out that way, but by the end of it, that's what we're looking for, that consistent walking. He's paying attention to you. And since he has all these rules to follow of, oh, I got to sit down when mom stops, or I got to keep an eye on her because I don't want to pass her or fall behind or go this way, that can eliminate a lot of those areas, where he's getting distracted, because we're not necessarily correcting for the distractions, but he has so many things to do in heel, he's not going to have time to worry about that. Yeah. So a lot of that can get cleaned up with how we do the heel command as well. And then did you say that he gets like amped up when like guests come over and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, anytime anyone walks in the door, he's just like,
okay.
goes bonkers, right?
Yeah.
He's just like so excited.
Mm-hmm. So there's kind of two ways that we can go about addressing that as well. With the place command, are you familiar with the place command as well?
Is that just where they stay in their spot, not allowed to move?
Yeah, kind of. So some people will do it where they're really strict about it. We just like to have it where, for example, if he was on that dog bed over there, he can do whatever he wants on that dog bed, but he can't get off the dog bed until we release him.
Okay.
So that's how we do it, and that can be kind of a Band-Aid fix for the excitement when people are coming in. Yeah, because then we have something to reinforce, similar to the heel command. We're not correcting him necessarily on the issue that he's having with excitement with the people, but he has to follow through with this thing, so he doesn't have that option.
Right,
yeah. So we can do it that way. And then another way, if you do, no matter what type of training program you do, you'll either do in person or you'll do daycare board and train. Mm-hmm. And with the daycare and board and train, you get follow-ups. In person is the in-person lessons. Mm-hmm. One of those sessions you can schedule as an in-home, and we would more directly work on that excitement at the door to where you're not using the place command as a quote-unquote Band-Aid, but we're addressing the excitement at the door like directly. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted that like addressed directly, then that's something that we could do with the e-collar as well. Okay. But some people just like it to where, oh, I'm just going to use the place command. Like I don't want to worry about the door stuff. But either way, with the e-collar too, you can kind of handle all that. So what we recommend to our clients is collaring up the dog 30 minutes before anybody's going to come over, before any excitement is going to happen, just so that one, he's not looking at the e-collar as, okay, as soon as this goes on, like now I have to be calm. The 30 minutes kind of gives him time to forget about it a little bit, so that way he's not associating like, as soon as I put the collar on, I'm just going to shut down. And then it's also going to let you address any buildup beforehand. So as you know the people are coming over, you already have the e-collar ready, you're already at the number you want, and you're kind of ready to go. That's another way that clients like to do it as well.
And I don't mind. So this is one thing that he does, because he always alerts as soon as he knows. I mean, he can, apparently has very good hearing. Knows as soon as someone's like out on our sidewalk or coming up our stairs, and he'll start barking. Okay. And I don't mind him kind of, especially given the state of affairs of the city, barking a few times to like let someone know, like, hey, we have a dog here. It's I don't want him, once we open the door, we know them, to lunge at them. If it's someone I don't know, go ahead, lunge at them. Right? But if it's like, a friend, I don't want him jumping. Okay. But I don't mind the bark a couple times, right? Because it tells me that, hey, someone's at the door and he's not sure who they are. That sort of thing. So I don't know kind of if that makes sense or not. But. No,
that makes sense. I'm the same way with my dog. I let him bark just because I like the security of it. So there's no issue there. We can let that happen. We would just then, instead of tapping, like without saying anything on the e-collar for the barking, we would tie a word to it. So for example, for my dog, we do, I don't know if you've ever seen Cesar Millan, how he does the verbal corrections where he's like, shh, and he does that. That's what I do with my dog. So once I make that noise and I like snap, he knows that that's kind of his warning, and he'll quiet down. But if I don't do that, then he's allowed to bark because. Like something like that. If it's someone we don't want at the door, then go ahead and go crazy, right? But if it's a buddy, then we don't want you going too crazy. Yeah, so for that, then we would just tie some type of verbal command to it, just so that way you're not telling him you can't do this, you're just telling him you can only do this when I want you to do it.
Right.
But that's not an issue, but because a lot of people feel the same way, where they like the extra security and they don't want to completely shut down all of the dog's behaviors, and that's not an issue. We just tie it to a command then. And then for the recall, no matter what program you do, the recall is going to take the longest to kind of proof, just because that is like the main command that needs to be reliable off leash.
Yeah.
So if you're in the in-person program, that started pretty early. I think it's the second or third class. And then for the board and train, daycare and train, it started on like the first day basically. Just because we go through it in phases, because we don't want to just jump into off leash and maybe George is getting confused by the e-collar and then now we don't have the recall.
Right.
We start with a long leash and have that in hand, go through the command with the e-collar, just so that he understands what he needs to do. We can give him that guidance with the long leash.
Yep.
And we also have it there just as a security in case he doesn't follow through. And then as he's getting consistent with that, then we move into long leash drag in an enclosed environment. So for example, if he was here in like the playpen, and we would let the long leash go, so that way we don't have a hold of him, but we still have something to be able to make the command happen if he's not following through. And then the next phase after that would be enclosed area still, but no leashes. So now we're seeing what he would do off leash, but in an emergency situation, he's not going to run away. And then once all those phases are kind of looking good and like everything's kind of consistent with him and we're confident in his abilities, then that's when you can start practicing it like off leash outside. You can still practice it outside through all these steps, but yeah. And then we would go through how you would practice it. Now that the weather's nice too, whether you're in person or you're just doing follow-ups for the board and train, daycare and train, we would have our sessions in Oz Park or Palmer Square Park, just to get that outside experience. But that will be available to you with whatever program. It's just kind of how it's scheduled. And then so your goals for him, are you trying to move towards like the full off-leash reliability or somewhere in between, or just kind of like just you want to get the basics down and then just work on your recall?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, he's just completely off-leash and we can... I mean, I was watching someone the other day, they were walking down the street and their dog was just walking next to him without a leash on. I was like, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great. But, you know, any bit helps here, I would think. So I guess I would like if he was, you know, if he got off leash, it wouldn't matter, and just be like, hey, George, come here, and he comes over. Like, I just want him to listen.
Okay.
This is my point.
Yeah.
So to get all the way the off leash would be great, but even if we just got to behavior correction, I would also be happy with that.
Okay. Yeah, the only reason why I asked that question is because when we recommend our programs, we don't want to give the owner too much to where they're like, oh, I'm happy with this, and then they have a whole other half of the program that they're like, I don't really need this now.
Okay.
So we try and give just enough to where like this is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Because if you want the full off leash, then we would recommend the like more intensive programs where it's like the 12-week in person or the 4-week board and train or the 20-day daycare and train. Those are like the kind of top end of the spectrum to get to like that off leash as fast as possible.
Yep.
Or on the flip side, maybe you just want to get the basics down and see where you're at with that. Then you could do something smaller like the 6-week program where you're going to cover all the basics and kind of work through the general issues that you're having with him. But if you need more classes, you can always get like add-on classes.
Okay.
And then for the daycare / board and train, that's where we would recommend like the 1 to 2 week board and train or the 5 to 10 day daycare and train.
Okay.
We always recommend the 2 week or the 10 day because it's just like a little bit more than the bare minimum, just because when we go into that second week or those next 5 days, we start to test the commands more intensely. So the first week for both of those is just short leash and we go through everything, all the commands. And the second week is long leash. So we go through all the commands long leash. So now we're testing how well he's going to stay when we're not by him, how well he knows place when we're not by him, and all through the rest of the commands, seeing if he's going to understand it when we're not next to him. But we still have the long leash on him.
Yeah, I guess for me, it would be helpful if you just kind of, is there like something in a printout or something that you can give me that kind of explains that? So because I have to also think about schedules too as summer comes.
Yeah.
Because of a couple of different random summer vacations. But I mean, the idea, like for me, I think it'd be really helpful to have some mix of maybe in person, because I think a lot of the behavior issues are going to be in the house, right? Just because I want him to kind of replicate like the door scene is most of it. Right?
Yeah.
So I could see where the in-person there would be really beneficial. I also see where it could be beneficial for him to be here kind of with intense training with you guys, you know, maybe on if I boarded him, I think my kids would kill me, so more like a daycare type.
Yeah.
Where we pick him up at night so he could still be with the kids. And you know, that would probably make sense. But if you could break all three of those options out for me and kind of what the result you typically see at each clinic is, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. I can go through it here, and then if there's anything that you still want to look over for yourself, we have all the programs available on the website to look at. So if you want the kind of, what's going to be the overall best program we offer is going to be the in-person for the classes, because there we're instructing you and you're doing everything with him. So you kind of get all the immediate hands-on experience of any difficulties he's having, and you get your questions and everything worked out right there in person. So that's always going to be like the top tier kind of. But that being said, there's still benefits to the daycare and train and board and train, but you said you would be more interested in something like a daycare and train?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. Depending on when it is, if we were happy to be out of town.
Oh, yeah.
We were like, hey, let's just board them for that time period with you guys and have them train.
Yeah.
Maybe that makes sense, but you know, it just depends on schedule.
Yeah, so I'll go through both, because we do have a lot of people who schedule their vacations specifically in line with their board and train program. So that way their dog's boarding, getting trained, they come back from vacation, then they have their follow-ups. If you were going to do the board and train, that would probably be a good way to set it up, because that way you can like schedule it all out in advance. The benefits of the board and train and the daycare and train is that we can make the training happen faster. So that's why it goes by like 4 weeks being the max rather than the 12-week in person. So we can get multiple sessions throughout the day with him. We have all of our other trainers here who are getting like 20-minute sessions throughout the day, usually about 6 to 8 sessions. So he's getting all that extra practice. And then after all that, then you get your follow-up. So you still get your in-person and you still get your in-home, however you want to schedule it. It's just that we're doing a lot of the starting work, and then we just transfer everything over to you. Yeah. And then with those, you also get videos. So what'll happen is, let's say he's doing the 2-week board and train program. The first week, you'll get a video of all his first sessions of doing all the commands. So you'll see his first time doing heel, first time doing place, recall, all that. And it's all recorded and explained to you how you'd practice at home, and all of that. And then the second week, you get all the commands again, but now his first time doing long leash, and then so on and so forth. So third week would be long leash in the playpen with the other dogs to see if he's still going to follow through with all these other distractions. And then the fourth week would be doing the e-collar commands, long leash in either Horner Park or Oz Park, depending on whatever's going to work out best. And we would take him there and record how he's doing in an outside environment, how he's doing with his recall outside, everything like that. And depending on his progress, we've had times where there was a Doberman we were training one time, and she was just really good with all the commands. And we were able to do like off leash in the park with her by the end of the 4 weeks. Now that's not guaranteed. It's kind of on how he's doing. But that last video is just like, this is all the progress so far. And then you would get all those, and then updates through the email of how he's doing, everything like that. And then if he's social too, he'll be a part of all the daycare stuff, the play groups. Yeah. So then
the dog is equal in size, unless it's a golden. He'll play with any golden.
Oh, okay.
He's been nipped a few times by some mean bigger dogs, so he's generally like someone his size or smaller, unless it's a golden retriever, and then he's on board.
That's understandable. But when he's here, he'll be able to do all that, like play in the play groups, do treadmill time, do duration work on our placemats here. So our dogs that train with us in No Place, they just have an hour to an hour and a half on one of these dog beds here that we have out there just to practice. Yeah. And then it's also teaching them how to remain calm while all this other stuff is going on around them. And it's just something to keep rotating him throughout the day.
He really likes to sleep, as you can tell.
Yeah.
We go from completely hyper to this.
Yeah, he settled down a lot, but that's good. And then the daycare and train is the same thing, just a little bit less intensive in a shorter amount of time. Because for the daycare and train, you can schedule your days out. So like maybe you'd want to bring him Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay.
Then he would come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do his daycare and train, and then the rest of the time he could come to normal daycare if you want, or he could just be at home with you. So you can schedule those days more specifically, so it's a little bit more flexible.
Right.
And then you would still get the same thing with the videos. So his first 5 days will be the first video, and then next 5 for the next. It lines up pretty much exactly the same with the board and train.
Okay,
and then with that, you would get, so the way that we break up the follow-ups is we go by hours for the board and train, daycare and train. Okay. So you can schedule it however you like. For example, sometimes people will do 2 hours right off the bat just to go through everything. Just because they want to get that in-person kind of transfer over before they use the videos to try and work on stuff with him. Some people like to use all the videos first and then practice on their own and then set up a follow-up when they're like, hey, I've had this problem, can we work on this? Or how you said you want to do the in-home stuff, you can schedule like a specific in-home session where it's like, he's good with all the commands now, I've watched the videos, but I want to work on this in-home thing. You could schedule that too. Okay. So that's really flexible with the in-person stuff. Okay. And then for the daycare and train as well, the hours are a little bit different. So for the board and train, it goes 2, 4, 6, 8. So the first, if you just do 1 week, you get 2 hours follow-up. And then so on and so forth, 4, 6, 8, yeah. Okay. And then for the daycare and train, I think it's a little bit different. I think for the first 5 days, it's an hour. If you do 10 days, it's 3 hours. If you do 15 days, it's 5 hours. And then if you do the 20 days, it's 7 hours, I think. Okay. So it's pretty much the same thing, just odd numbers. Yeah. But that's what you would get for that. And then for him, if you want to do the like full off leash, kind of get all your bases covered, just go for it with everything, then that's where we would recommend like a 4-week or a 20-day daycare and train. But I think that you could probably get away with 2 weeks being the minimum, just to make sure that you address everything kind of in the most cohesive way. And then 3 weeks would be like he's solid there. And then 4 weeks is if you just want to like just do, I guess, like the most that you can do. Okay. So yeah, I would say like 2 weeks at least minimum. Yeah. Okay. Or 10 days minimum. And then for the in-person, that would be the 6-week in-person. Okay. And then with the in-person, we do keep it to a repeating schedule. So you would get a time slot. So let's say... It's like every Monday. Yeah. Let's say a specific time every Monday works for you. That's what you would do. And then you do get one cancellation / reschedule. Okay. So if one day is not going to work for you, you can switch it out and... you're not going to lose that Monday spot if that's what you have set up. Right. So there's a little bit of flexibility there too, but that one's a little bit more rigid with the scheduling. Yeah, I'm just thinking because our life is crazy with kids' sports and travel and work and I'm thinking just off the top of my head that probably the daycare and train and in-person mix kind of might work better for us, just because of the flexibility that you mentioned in that regard. And then potentially the need to have additional in-person on top of kind of whatever comes with what that is. Seems like it might be the right answer. And again, like my biggest concern is the lake. Well, the behavior is annoying, but my real concern that really drove me here was I really need to work on this recall because my parents are watching him at the lake for a few days this summer, and when my dad calls him, I want the dog to come because I don't want him to run across
right across the street. And to be honest, he's a total wimp, and he probably wouldn't leave our side, to be honest, especially if I'm around. But just with my parents kind of taking the lead there for a couple days with him, I just, in a different environment, I just want to make sure that he comes when he's called.
Yeah, and that's kind of the good thing about the e-collar is that maybe, let's say his number's 30, your tap at 30 is the same as them tapping at 30.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very easy to hand off, and that's basically why the board and train, daycare and train programs are able to happen, especially if with a dog like him, it's more obedience based.
Yeah.
So we can do the daycare and train, board and train. If he had more behavioral issues to like a more intense degree, then we would have to do in person.
Yeah.
But for him, a daycare and train would absolutely work. If
So that was the big problem with the training that I did. To be honest, he's pretty good for me.
Yeah.
But the minute because my husband didn't go to any of the training classes with him,
Mm-hmm.
he wouldn't listen to him at all. 'Cause
Yeah.
you're not the one that did this with me, so I'm not gonna. If you watch him walk on a leash with me, he's generally somewhat loose leashed most of the time. But if my husband, he's like at the end, like
Yeah.
lurching for everything and not paying attention to him. So
Yeah, that's very common, especially my dog can be the same way because he knows that, for example, if he's with my mom or my grandma, they're a lot softer with him.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when a kid's going over to grandma's house, they're going to get away with more.
Yeah. No, that's it.
But yeah, like I said, very easy to transfer over. So as long as like you're just conveying to them whatever they have to do,
Yep.
he should be able to follow through, given the practice and everything like that.
Okay.
So
Not exhibiting any bad behaviors here, George.
no, it's fine because it's good that he's a little bit more settled and everything like that. Just because sometimes what we'll see is that dogs, when they're coming into the new environments and everything, start to get more anxious, and then it can be like a kind of another thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's pretty relaxed.
It's like as long as you have a cool floor to lay on, I'm good.
For the daycare and train programs, like I said, I would do like 10 days minimum, but it sounds like you may want the extra follow-up hours of the 15-day. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah.
Just because I think, so with the 3 hours, we could probably spend an hour on recall at minimum, an hour on either walking or any other like behavioral stuff, or obedience stuff, I should say, and then an hour doing the in-home stuff, and that's kind of like using up all the time.
But then you can buy additional in person if you want to, right? Can you say that?
Yeah, you can add in classes, but the scheduling with that will be a little weird because you'd have to go from the daycare and train stuff to setting something up with either Jesse or Enrique.
Yeah. Okay.
Not to say you can't, it's just that's a little bit weirder to do. Like you might have some scheduling issues that you need to figure out because I don't know what their schedules are looking like, you know what I mean? So I would probably say for the extra follow-up hours, it might be nice to go for the 15-day one. But if you're fine with just the 3 hours, then I would say the 10-day would be perfectly fine for him.
Okay. Well, let me look at both options.
Yeah.
And then what's your is there a wait list to get into the daycare and train, or is it something that's available?
No. So what would happen is after the consultation here, I'll let one of our operation managers, Elizabeth, I'll let her know everything that is going on with George, the program, the e-collar, everything like that, and then she'll reach out to you via email. And what you'll do is you'll schedule the days that you want to come in advance. So like let's say next week you're trying to get in on a Tuesday and we don't have any daycare and trains on Tuesday. Then he can just start Tuesday, like as soon as everything's like all cleared with his vaccinations and everything like that. But the only kind of limitation would be that if we have some other daycare and trains already scheduled for that day in advance, then he would have to go on a different day.
Okay.
So as long as you're scheduling in advance, there'll be no clashing. Especially with the daycare and trains, it's a little bit easier because now we're just scheduling one day instead of the board and trains are occupying like whole weeks. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So that's how you would go about that, and you would just let Elizabeth know like maybe you want to do Wednesday, Thursday every week, or maybe this week you want to try doing like 4 or 5 days, and then you want to hold off for a little bit, use your first video, and then send him back for his like next 5 days. You can kind of decide how you want to space that out.
Okay. Yeah. So can I I mean, assume there's like a price breakdown of everything.
Yeah.
So I want to go over all of that, obviously, with my husband tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And then get things moving, because we need to, I mean, if you act like this, George, all the time, we'd be good.
Yeah.
But I mean, he does do this most of the time. It's just like when we open the door to come home,
Mm-hmm.
and then not listening to me refill signatures.
Yeah. But as far as the program stuff, you can check out the website for all the payment information and all that. And then I'll still let Elizabeth know that you're kind of in between the 10, 15 days, just so she can reach out to you and kind of talk to you about that.
Yeah.
And then for the collar, for him, I think we'll do the 2300. So it's a little bit lower than the like highest collar that we have, that like the highest power one. That is the 1900S Black Edition.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to,
He's not bad.
yeah.
He doesn't need that. He's not like a pit bull or.
Yeah, he seems like he could get away with the 2300.
Yeah, he's only a 32-pound dog, so
Mm-hmm.
he's pretty small.
Yeah, and then worst case scenario, if for some reason like he's just like super tough and he's just not responding to that at all, we can always try out the different collar on him to see what would happen. But I think 2300 will be fine for him. And then you don't have to remember the name of that or anything, because Elizabeth will send it in the email. And then for that, you can either get it ahead of time on Amazon or Dogtra, or when you send him on his first day here, we have them here and we can just set him up all here. So however you would want to go about that as well. And then for the pricing for that is also on the website, and you can just look on Dogtra. It's all the same prices. And that will also all be in the email that Elizabeth is going to send you, just so that way there's no confusion or anything like that. But does that all make sense and everything?
I get all that. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions involving like the programs or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Well, if you don't have any more questions or anything like that, then I think we could just go ahead and I'll have Elizabeth send you that email, and then you can talk it over and see when's the earliest we can get you started. I think there might be, because there's another daycare and train coming in, so there's like a 50-50 chance there's some dates available next week. But the week after that, I don't think is booked yet. So you should be able to get started within the next 2 to 3 week max.
Okay. And then do you mind if I see the daycare or the
The issue with that right now, when we do the follow-ups and stuff, you could see it. It's just that if we bring somebody in right now, especially with a new dog and all that, all the dogs are going to go crazy, and then it's a whole thing to calm them down. So, because we try and keep it like quiet and everything. So we usually don't let people go in and see, but if it's a client, then it's a different thing, and you can come in.
Okay, and then just the types of dogs that are here. I mean, are they all aggressive dogs, or do you have calmer dogs like my dog? I mean, because I went to another e-collar place, and I wanted to view everything. It was basically all pit bulls and German shepherds, and
okay.
That's not. It just, I was like, this is not. I mean, that's not going to be good for him, right?
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't need a bunch of aggressive dogs.
Yeah, the split is like 70 to 80, like normal. I should say normal, because I feel like that's kind of mean. Like kind of more mild-mannered, neutral dogs like him, and then the other like 20-25% is like the more antisocial dogs who have some difficulties. But we keep them all the same energy level. We have the e-collars for the ones that need it, and we keep everything quiet. So there's no barking in the daycare. There's none of that. And then we have like a ton of social dogs too, because we will have a play group going into playpen, and then we have a separate playpen for the antisocial dogs to stretch their legs and do their thing.
He's not hanging out with kind of more the and learning that type of behavior, or scaring him, so then he becomes antisocial and doesn't want to see dogs anymore because he's afraid. Like he got attacked at a dog park one time. So you know, like
I understand.
Those kind of dogs.
I understand. There's how do I put it? The antisocial dogs are not involved with the social dogs. The only time that we do like socializing stuff is when we have like our experienced handlers handling everything, and then we use like specific dogs for that. We don't just like, we're not going to have him be like our main socialization dog or something. So you don't have to worry about that. For him, it'll just be normal daycare, play groups, treadmill if he wants to treadmill, and then duration work. And that's like the 3 things he'll be rotating throughout the day, and then also having some downtime in his kennel just to relax for a second. So you don't have to worry about any of that.
Okay.
And then the dogs that do have issues, we know how to handle them, and we have them muzzled and e-collared.
Okay.
So that's all taken care of.
Cool.
Um,
What do you think, George? He's like still sleeping.
He's asleep.
He's like, you took me on a long walk today.
Yeah, it's probably the heat today.
Oh,
I want to take a nap too.
He went for like a 45-minute walk with me too, so now he's like, it's so hot.
Yeah. But yeah, that all sounds good.
All right, yeah, have Elizabeth email me, sounds good, and then I'll be in touch because I want to get him well-behaved before we go see Grandma and Grandpa, right, Bob?
When are you planning on
That's the end of June.
end of June?
When we hang out with Grandma and Grandpa.
Let me see. We should be able to fit it in
Yeah,
before
at least,
then.
Yeah, at least get a lot of
Yeah.
it in. And I'm sure we'll still need follow-up after the fact. But
Hmm. Yeah, and then the follow-ups you keep forever. So you can use them, like you can save it until maybe next year or something happens and then you want to try and use it.
Yeah.
And you can also, I don't know if I mentioned this, you can use follow-ups in between the training.
Right.
So maybe after the first 5 days
No,
you want
I
to just
definitely
do,
would wanna that.
yeah.
I think I would want to have it interspersed, and then if we have to buy more follow-ups or do whatever, we do that.
Mhm.
I had one other question for you. I forgot it.
That's okay.
It'll come to me.
Yeah, you can always send an email and then Elizabeth will most likely be able to answer everything.
Okay, yeah.
And if it's a more training specific question, then
Yeah.
either me or Enrique will be able to answer it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, I look forward to receiving the email, and
Yep.
George, you're going to be just a great dog, aren't you?